Okay, so I'm going to show everybody how easy it really is to use a bread machine. So I'll show you the bread machine in just a minute, but I wanted to go over a couple things about it first. The only real, well, a couple downsides to this one specifically, I can't say this is for all of them, but this one specifically, the cord is a little short, so you got to be close to an outlet or have it on an extension cord. And I don't like to do appliances on extension cords, but you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Luckily, my counter space does have a plug-in to where it reaches. Doesn't allow the lid to lift all the way up unless I pull it out, but anyways. And the only other downfall that I can think of is when it goes to stir, the little paddle in there just doesn't get all the way to the corners here, the four corners in there. So you gotta give it a little bit of help, but I'm gonna show you guys that in a minute. This is the Hamilton Beach bread maker. When I bought this, it was on sale, and so I thought, let's give it a try. I didn't realize that it was one that does all the stuff for you. So like it kneads the dough and mixes the dough and all that, proofs the dough, all that. And it has this right here, has multiple recipes in it for different things. You can do jam in it, different breads, cornbread. You can do a pound cake or a devil food cake, and it's got all of the recipes in here. You don't have to use these, of course, but I do. I've tried a couple of them out, and I really like them. The only thing is, when I make the banana bread, I don't use the banana in the bags. I use fresh bananas. But I'm going to do a loaf of white bread and show you guys just how easy it is. Somebody wants a couple white loaves from me, and this is just the fastest, easiest way for me to do it because I am busy boiling sap. I am busy, getting dinner for the kids, homeschooling, all that stuff tonight. So we're going to use this trusty old guy here. So right here, and I know it's probably backwards in your camera, but right here is your white bread, and it gives you the option of doing 1.5 pound loaf or a 2 pound loaf, and it gives you that option on the bread machine. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to grab all the ingredients I need because I didn't think to do that before I started the video, so I'll be right back. Okay, so now I have all of my ingredients right here. I'm going to read them off to you guys just so you understand, like, most of this you already have, especially if you do bake regularly. You need a cup of water. I'm doing the 1.5 pound loaf. A cup of water, 1 1/8 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 3 tablespoons of butter or vegetable oil. I'm using oil because it's easier. It's already, melted down. Well, you know what I mean. Ready to go. 3.5 cups of bread flour. You want to make sure it's bread flour for this particular recipe. 1.5 teaspoons of bread machine yeast. I always just use the regular active yeast. I don't really get the bread machine yeast, but that's what it calls for. So you take this guy that comes with it, and you just put all your ingredients right in there. Okay? You want to do, I believe you want to do the wet ingredients first. It just works better. Okay, so I've already measured out my 1 cup of water, and I use filtered water, just what I do. So I'm going to dump that in there. And I'm going to use a dry one for the dry ingredients, but you don't have two to use, just use what you got. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go right down the list so I don't forget anything or, mess anything up. So 1 1/8 teaspoons of salt. I don't have an 1/8 teaspoon, so I'm going to cut this one in half and use the 1/4 teaspoon and just do half of it. But it does call for 1 1/8. So I'll grab my 1 teaspoon. Where are you at? Well, I have a half teaspoon, so we'll just make do with that, and I'll do 2 of those. Of salt. I'm just using regular salt. So I need 1 full teaspoon. sure I'm reading that right. It's been a while since I've made bread. So there's my 1, and then I need an 1/8. So I'm going to do half of this guy. Okay. There's my salt. 1 tablespoon of sugar. There's my tablespoon. I'm just using regular sugar, granulated sugar. Okay. And then I need 3 tablespoons of the oil. So I have this little guy already filled up with oil. It's just what I use. And the oil, I don't want to have to melt butter down or anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and use this. So 1, 2, and 3. And that also helps when you put the water in first to break down the sugar and the salt. Let it kind of break down in the water, and then the oil be added. And so it just kind of helps the process a little bit too. So now I need 3½ cups of bread flour. Yes, bread flour. It has to be specifically bread flour for this recipe. What is this, 2 cups? Yeah. So go ahead and fill this guy up with 2 cups. I have them all in containers and labeled because then they're airtight. And they last longer than just using the bags. But that's just me. I need to get more bread flour. I just got a whole thing of unbleached flour, or white flour. But I need to get more bread flour, and then I got a bunch of rye flour too. So I have to add this guy to my list. Okay, there's exactly 2. And then I need 1, and what is left? 1½. There's my 1½ mark. There's 1, and there's, is that right, 1½? Oh, right there's 1½. I was like, okay. Thought it was on there somewhere. Just want to make sure I know where it is before I start pouring. Okay. And there's 1½ of the bread flour. So that equals the 3½ we need for this loaf. And then you just need 1½ teaspoons of the bread machine yeast. One of these little packets will last you a few different times. So like I just keep the open one and then use it for my next batch. I need, what, 1½ teaspoons? Where did my teaspoon go? So, I always double check. You never know what you're grabbing. You think you read it right. So I just double check. So there's 1. And I am out, so let me grab another one real quick. Because that was a already open packet from the last time that I made it. So I still need 1/2 teaspoon. So again, then I'll just use this for my next batch. Which I have to actually make 2 loaves tonight anyways, plus banana bread. So, which you don't use this for banana bread, but so it'll get used. I'm sure it'll actually be just right to do another loaf, but I don't really know exactly how much it measures out to be. Honestly, I haven't really paid attention. So that's it. So what I do now, you don't have to with, like, you're not supposed to be able to have to, I'm trying to word that right. You're not supposed to have to do this. Like, it's not in the directions or whatever. Well, it really doesn't give you directions. You're basically just dumping it all in there, and this is supposed to mix it for you. However, like I said, I noticed that a lot of it clumps in the corners. So what I like to do is I like to get a spatula, like a rubber spatula, and I pre-mix it a little bit, not too much, because the machine is going to mix it for you, and you don't want it to over mix, because then your loaf won't turn out right. So let me grab a spatula real quick. That's one thing I forgot to grab. Okay, so I just do a little bit around the sides to get the flour. And then you want to make sure you have the paddle in there before you start pouring stuff in there, because otherwise you have to dig through all this mess and get it in there. So I just kind of push it away from the corners a little bit, and then as it goes, I kind of watch it and help it. I'll open the lid and stick my thing in there. So now I'm going to put this into the machine. And you're gonna put it in a little sideways, and you're gonna turn it so it clicks. So I'm gonna show you. Let me get it in here first. Okay. So let me show you guys. The machine. It's Hamilton Beach. Up here you have all of your settings. So here's your cycle. In the book, it tells you right here, recipes. This is in the column basic. So all of these are considered basic. So your cycle is going to be cycle 1. So it's that simple. So I put this in here, and then I'm trying not to. Okay, there. Well, it didn't make the clicking noise, but it's in there. And then you just close the lid. Pretty simple. And then here's your start and stop button there, of course. It has all of your listings right there. So 1.5 express, 2 pound express, like all those, cake. This is a basic recipe again, so you're going to remember that. You're going to hit 1. But it's got it all listed on here, I guess, in case you forget or whatever. I mean, let me zoom this out a little bit. There we go. And then here's your crust. I find that it does pretty dark crust, so I always go with the light. So what we're going to do, and then loaf size. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit your loaf size first, and see right here, it's got 2 pound and 1 pound. Your little arrow, I know it's a little hard to see, but you want to make sure that we're doing the 1.5 pound. So we're just going to hit that loaf size button, and it changed it now to 1.5. Because we don't have enough ingredients there to do the 2. Okay, and then I want to make sure that it's on light crust. So here's your crust setting. So it's going to go dark and then light. So now we have 1.5 pounds, and it's light crust. Now we're going to go through the cycles. It's already on cycle 1, so you don't have to do anything with that. And you just hit start. So you can hear it go as soon as you hit start. This is my simple way of making bread. Okay, it saves time. Saves all that because it literally bakes it. Okay, so I'm going to open the lid and show you. It's mixing it for you. And then based on the setting that you choose, like the one that you're baking, it will let it rest. It will proof it for you and do all that. So like you'll hear it stop for a while. That's when it's resting or rising. And then sometimes it'll go again. Sometimes it'll beep, and that's when certain ones, like the banana bread, it's like, okay, now you can add your nuts. So it beeps and lets you know, okay, now it's time to add your nuts. You do that real quick, and then it'll go again, mix them in, and then it bakes. Now, based on the setting, it will shut off when it's done baking. It's done. It stops baking. So that's the other nice thing compared to the oven is you don't have to keep checking on it. The only downside is, like I said, you have to help it a little bit. So see how it's not getting all in the corners there. So let me see if I can prop that up and then help it out a little bit. So this is what I like to do. I just like to push it to see it's not going to hurt anything. You would just gently help it out here. Oh, sorry. I'm going to prop the... Let's see if I can get this corner back in here. The camera there. Never easy easy when you're holding a camera in one hand. Okay. So now it's got most of it. I'll get in this corner. But every once in a while, if you just kind of peek in there and help it out, it does a lot better. So now it's kneading the dough. I mixed it, and now it's kneading it for you. And then the only other downside to baking it in here is the little wand that's down in the bottom. You can pop it out before it starts baking sometimes, but sometimes it just goes directly to baking and it's heated, so you don't want to touch it. It does leave a little hole in the bottom of the bread. It leaves a hole where the paddle is, but if you take the paddle out, it still has a little thing that sticks up, so you will have a hole in the bottom of your bread. A lot of people don't really care, but that's, you know, just one thing you have to remember, is that little paddle's down there and it's going to be at the bottom of your bread. So I'm just going to let this go. It's going to do its thing, and then when it's baking, it'll smell really delicious. You'll be able to tell. I'll peek at it here in a few minutes, make sure I don't need to stir it in again, just help it out. But other than that, I'm done. I can walk away and it does this thing and it bakes it for me and it beeps when it's done and then it cools down. Now you do have to let it cool down completely before you use it again, which is a great feature because you don't want to overwork your machine, overheat your machine, or start fire, you know, any of that. So you do have to keep that in mind when you're doing multiple loaves. Give yourself enough time, and plus allow it to cool down in between. It will not even turn on until it's cooled completely down. So other than that, it's a really great machine. I love it. Even with the couple little flaws that I found, it's nothing that I don't work through. So if you're thinking about getting one, I recommend it. It saves a lot of time. So, and like I said, I mean, there's different settings, so you can do all of the different breads. So here it'll show you too the timetable. So there's basic bread, French bread. You can even do gluten-free, quick bread, which the quick bread I believe is like your banana bread. And then there's sweet bread. Well, maybe sweet bread's the banana bread. I don't know. But anyways, and then you have you can just do dough, jam cake, whole grain, and then just bake. So there's all different ones, but it specifies as you go the route. So here's your white. So they got white wheat, onion poppy seed. Let's see if I can turn the page. No. Well, we'll skip the page, I guess. Gluten-free sandwich bread, whole grain bread, banana nut. The only thing I changed out of here is I don't put in the banana mix and I don't use nuts. There's cornbread, devil's food cake, yellow pound cake. Oh my goodness, these pages are sticking together. Cranberry orange pecan, cinnamon raisin. Oh, those are your sweet ones. Cinnamon raisin, white pepper dill. The only one I cannot do in this thing is the sourdough, unfortunately. There's just not enough rest time because sourdough has to go between like roughly 6 hours for it to be able to rise, and it doesn't do that in this machine. But you can do cinnamon raisin buns. They have a recipe even for the filling. Jam, there's a strawberry jam recipe, there's a cake cycle. So lots of awesome recipes and different ways you can do bread in this thing. I love it. If you're looking into getting one, obviously you don't have to get this brand, but this is the one I've got and I highly recommend it. So if you're in the market for one, comment below which ones you are thinking about getting, or what you think of a bread machine if you have one and what brand it is. So I'd love to hear about it. And what is your favorite type of bread? Alright, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching.